Good morning. Happy Monday. It's the beginning of a new work week. So let's get started on the right foot. On the good foot, as James Brown likes to say. We were going over the new topic of spiritual androgyny. So I want to discuss a little bit about that today and some of the racial context that we deal with as it pertains to this topic. Okay? One of the biggest struggles I had when I was in school was deciding which culture's habits were most appropriate for each particular situation. For example, when it is time to read in the front of the class, if you want to read a page of a Harry Potter book, that is not the time to act like an African American, because African Americans do not respect literacy. Okay, they have their academics certainly, but because they have sold their culture effectively to the Jewish community, and you can see this because all hip-hop music is owned by Jewish record labels, Jewish-owned record labels, and anytime African Americans try to put even a distribution network together, they either get executed or some great, hostile takeover. BET used to be owned by Bob Johnson, and now it is owned by Viacom. So all the Teen Summit and AJ and Free and all those former semi-positive role models are all thrown by the wayside because the Jewish community idolizes mammon. Mammon is another word for it's King James word for money. So when money is your god, you see people as commodities or products. And the reason I talk so specifically about the African American community is because they built this country. So when you want to solve a problem, you have to go back to first principles, right? The first principles of America is chattel slavery. And this is where it's important for you to know people like Dr. Claude Anderson, Dr. Joy DeGroy, Godfrey, the comedian Godfrey, has a way of modernizing a lot of these topics. And he was a graduate of Lane Tech High School here in the Chicagoland area. I like people from Chicago because they have a good blend of culture and history. So I was excited, even though I graduated here in the suburbs. I appreciated the opportunity to go to IIT on the south side of Chicago, the near south side before Chicago jumps down my throat. Almost the loop, but not even. It wasn't even the low end. So the real south side begins the low end onwards, and so the only exposure I have there is a brief time in amateur boxing and a brief time in amateur relationships. So, New York has its history of knowledge and mathematics, as the Reverend Fredro Starr likes to say, but Chicago has a lot to offer as well. So, there are some things you can learn from the Nation of Islam, but that is also kind of controlled opposition. Louis Farrakhan may have had something to do with Malcolm X's demise, just as Jesse Jackson had something to do with Martin Luther King's demise. In Judas and the Black Messiah, they always put the guy that kills you right next to you. So when my mother died, or what I like to say was murdered, who wanted to ride home with me in my vehicle back to my house? Samson, Pastor Samson. Okay, and now he is, putting Christmas trees up at the church where my mother shed tears for many years, praying for people in Manipur. Okay, Manipur. So anyway, when you make money your god, people become commodities. Okay, and that becomes very dangerous because you have people like Margaret Sanger who need to put Planned Parenthood in every black neighborhood so that a true Holocaust can happen. They never talk about that. It's fine to murder babies and steal their stem cells and do all the types of things, steal placentas and all the necessary nutrients for survival, put them in elementary schools, shut down their budgets, Rahm Emanuel, and close the schools that have opposing gangs in each block so the kids can walk and become collateral damage. And then you blame violence, and then you gentrify those neighborhoods and build condos up so you can, have your real estate thing. This is their idea of smartness and intelligence. Rather than making the world a better place, they treat what they call goyim as subhuman people. Okay, only the devil could make you think that way. Okay, I'm light skinned. I don't have a problem with people. Okay, basketball isn't the only way to make a living. Okay, so androgyny means when do you want to have masculine characteristics? When do you want to have feminine characteristics? Empathy is often seen as a feminine characteristic, but it can be very, very useful to a heterosexual male. If you're empathetic, you'll be able to proactively understand people's needs, where they are, based off of their current circumstances, and then you may be able to solve a problem proactively based off of that empathy, which is what Texas Movement did. Okay, I recognized that my community had a desire to be more competent athletically, physically, kinesthetically, and we did not have a good roadmap for kinesthetic intelligence because, as I said, when white people have academic interests, what they do is they make their silo of education their idol, their Tower of Babel. So when you look at things like physical therapy, personal training, athletic performance, right? Those are you see those as three different fields, but they all describe how the human body moves and recovers through space. So why wouldn't you combine all those together into one methodology? And so, with my engineering background, that's what I did. The concept of tensegrity is consistent through all three of those, and you can scale your training to accommodate each of those levels of experience. So you can speak to a gentleman down in Dallas that used me to help them recover from Achilles rupture, one with a surgical procedure done, one without a surgical procedure done, and we were able to bring them back to regular activity, even playing basketball for a time. Okay, and if we were still working together, I'm sure we'd continue to escalate and improve. But there was issues on my end that didn't allow that to continue. Okay, we were able to take someone who was injured all the time, and we were able to get him an opportunity to be healthy enough to play professional football again. Okay, so these things we were able to do all these things from the point of injury all the way to elite performance by having empathy for people, which is a feminine characteristic. So that's one example of healthy androgyny. And it did not require me to bend over and, perform fellatio on another man or have my anus penetrated by anything or anything like that. Okay? So there's lots of ways for you to honor and respect the women in your life without doing anything unbecoming and unnatural and abominable. Okay? So, what's the lesson? Don't treat people like cattle. Don't treat people like commodities. Okay? The Jewish way of thinking is bad. It's not good. We don't want to worship the devil or money. And we don't want to treat our singular area of intellectual expertise as an idol either. Okay? So, children, when you grow up, you need to appreciate all sides of the spectrum intellectually. Okay? So, I realized I got carried away when I was insulting African Americans. So, When you are reading in the front of the class, that is not the time to embrace African American Pushaisti culture. No. However, when you are engaging in praise and worship, okay, when you are in church and when you are in community with people, when you are testifying about how the Lord has been good to you, that is where I feel much more comfortable being in an African American demographic. Okay? Because of the historical ups and downs that have happened in the African American community, they have to be much more reliant on supernatural assistance. And the Lord has shown that He is very favorable to them despite the Jewish infection of their community. Okay? So I was encouraged greatly by Apostolic Faith Church on 38th in Indiana. Thank you, Vernell, for introducing me to that congregation. And best wishes to Pastor Jonathan Banks as he continues the race there. And I know that you all are taking my anecdotes in the appropriate comedic context that they are intended. So I'm not too worried about that. But when it is time to be around the people of God, that is when I feel far more comfortable with the African American community. Because, like the Malayali community, we look directly to the Lord for our assistance sometimes. Because when the world is jaded and slanted against us, even to the point where our necessary food and needs are being denied us, and our sons are in confinement, many times over sentenced and many times over punished for things that happen as a result of extreme desperation, okay, and extreme sabotage that comes from external sources. There are no gun manufacturing companies on the south side of Chicago or the west side of Chicago. Okay, it's not African American CEOs that are pumping these poisons into our community. Now, are Indians inventing crack and putting it into the inner cities in the 80s? Is fentanyl coming from us? No. Okay. So these things are pumped into our cities by design to try to make up for the fact that these Caucasians were living there in the 60s and then came out to the suburbs, and now they want to, again, march back into the cities, and so they have to what? Gentrify the neighborhoods. How do you gentrify the neighborhoods? You have to keep raising the rent so the people that can't afford that rent have to leave, right? So what do? You tear down housing projects named after Jews, and you push those people into the suburbs, right? And then you even complain there. Heaven forbid you give everybody a quality education and let us all live in peace and harmony so that we could all learn from each other in a healthy megalopolis area, just like the suburbs operate. But no, your magnet schools are for developing new homosexuals and making them first lady, right? And now we have an eyesore of a presidential library that will accomplish nothing, but it will take up space. And how quickly the roller coaster goes from 2004 Democratic National Convention to Bathhouse Berry. Now that the Gaddafi has been killed and all the bombs have been dropped. Okay? Children, being a token for your master is not a good career opportunity. The devil will always require a sacrifice at the end of the time. So, when you make your decisions about your life path, you need to factor all these, demonic things in. Okay, we live in a fallen world, and that's why it's important to be around people who honestly want to serve the Lord. Okay? So, that balance is very important. Now, you notice I went spiritual before athletic, right? Because, yeah, of course, African Americans have had a culture of excellence in many sports and things like that, but as we're seeing now, we thought it was just boxing that was rigged all this time. No, it was baseball, it was basketball, it was football, right? So all these NFL owners that are pretending that there's some great blindside, charity contributors by drafting these kids out of the hood, they don't choose people with fathers. And I want you all to look how Lamar Jackson's mother was treated when she tried to represent Lamar Jackson's interests. Okay? First, as a mobile quarterback, he has an inordinate amount of pressure to make quality cerebral decisions. Think of the weight that man has to carry. Think of the weight Michael Vick had to carry. Was he killing dogs personally? No. But your CIA Tucker Carlson made his name by demanding that Michael Vick, one of the most gifted leaders in history, and his brother Marcus was very talented as well in Virginia, demanding that he be executed. Because in white people's eyes, dogs' lives are worth more than leadership if it comes from an African American. How dare you? And you want me to be happy for an $85,000 a year salary, when an unlicensed 30-year-old ingrate daily challenges the experience and authority and education and office of a senior civil engineer. Where do you get off? And with the limited experience I had, I let him know those things. So don't worry about my ability to confront evil when I see it. And this is why they delay even what I worked for. Even property that has my name on it. They are the custodians of. And my biological father learned these practices. And when the belt would no longer work because I got too strong and my skin got too tough, he goes to his weapon, his spear of choice, which is his literary and spiritual gift. So the spear that he throws at me is his ability to discern a man's spiritual strength and weakness and deny him his strength and attack his weakness. He desperately wants to sit at the Jew demon table. So, I give you my eternal blessing to go sit with your master, like the dog that you are. House nigger. And I hope all you house niggers have a wonderful time in the big house for eternity. Michael Vick, you have led us with extreme dignity. They took the best of your years. We will always remember how you made the Vikings look like fools. I am truly grateful for you. Shout out to work done, by the way. I love the work you're doing, building houses for people. I hope that is, in fact, something you have some equity in. Okay? So that's another example of androgyny, being willing to serve under the leadership of someone that has a different ethnic background than you. That's another example. Okay? So this, you would think that this would make me, hyper masculine, and I want to be. I want to be optimally masculine, because you know, the track and football have interesting characteristics, right? So a lot of track people tried to play football, but when it comes time to run a 10-yard out or a slant or a comeback route, that's a quick shift down in speed and change of direction. And most track athletes only know how to shift up in gears, so they don't have that backwards ability. This is why learning the skill of a defensive back is super important, because it's all 360 degrees, and you have to learn how to start and stop, and also develop those gears as well. Okay, so those are a few things to get us started for the week. We're going to continue going over some of the parallels or some of the contrast between white and black culture in my observation, and where I think that white culture has some benefits to learn, and where I think black culture has some benefits to learn. And we are going to take Jewish culture and Malayali culture, and we're going to put those as opposites. So north is going to be Malayali culture, south is going to be Jewish culture, east is going to be white culture, and west will be black culture, or whatever compass suits your preferences. Okay? So I'll handle the Jews. You don't worry about that. Okay? And then we will decipher where white culture has best practices and where black culture has best practices. And Spanish-speaking culture, sit this one out if you guys don't mind. As always, I love you guys very much, but I want to make sure that any conversation I have is fortified with proper context, and it's not making too many presumptuous statements. Okay, so please excuse my putting you aside for the time being. Okay, I hope you're all doing well. Have a wonderful morning and day, and then hopefully we meet again later. All right, talk soon.